Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. This is kind of a different video, one that I'll do more of if you want to see, but it's been heavy on my mind for I think the past almost week, and if you guys, the title of the video I'm talking about, I'm not going to call her Hilliria because that's not her name. Her name is Hillary. I'm talking about Hilliria Baldwin, and the reason that I want to bring this up is because it's just, like I said before, it's just weighed really heavily on my mind, and I don't know if what I say, it's going to be, I don't want to, what's the word, not coherent. I want to make sure that I make sense, and I want to make sure that I'm actually going to put the computer on. I'm actually going to put my laptop on just so I can kind of react to things. Not react, but I'll make my point. There has been things going on in the web. She's been exposed basically for being a fraud. And what do I mean when I say fraud? She's been posing for the better part of a decade as a Spanish woman, born in Mallorca, Spain. And there's been many conflicting things, and I'll get into that in the video. And then she kind of went by Hilliria, which in English it means Hillary. It bothers me for several reasons. As a Latin woman myself, I am of mixed race, mixed ethnicity, I should say. And let me clarify that. Race has always been kind of a touchy issue with me, as it is for a lot of people, I would imagine. There's so many things that go on. There's so many things that people, how do I put this? There's so many things, especially this past year, that have happened to people of color that I think really points to the racial inequality, the colorism that still exists within this country, even now in 2021. We're still talking about race. And it's a good and bad thing. And again, I'll clarify what I mean by that. It's a great thing because it's a conversation that's being opened. It's a conversation that really we as a country, we've needed to have for quite some time. There may be more parts of this country that race isn't a thing. It's like, what do you mean? And there are parts of this country where it's still very much a topic for discussion and a topic for feelings, we'll call them. And the reason that this bothers me in particular, like I was saying before, I am of mixed race, mixed ethnicity. Race has always been a touchy issue with me because I was born into a Puerto Rican culture. That's what I know, but it also became confusing. I'm Black, white, and Hispanic. The Black culture, the white culture has always been something that has been kind of, how do I say this? I feel like I always have that question. Like, I'm originally from New York. I was born and raised in Harlem, and I have friends and family that are pretty much all over New York. I have family that has lived in Brooklyn. I have family that has lived their whole lives in the Bronx. Not so much Queens, but I think that have had family that has lived in Queens. I don't know. Staten Island, not as far as I know. Long Island, not as far as I know. Upstate, Yonkers, and Gardnerville and things like that. So I grew up in Harlem. So having the Black and Puerto Rican culture intertwined and mixed, that's what I grew up with. So it was always a question of, ethnically, I am multiracial. Culturally, I'm very much Puerto Rican. I know my history of Puerto Rico. I don't speak very fluent Spanish. Hopefully that's something that will eventually over time change. I would love to speak my language. It's just not something that I was taught growing up. When this whole thing kind of came about, you kind of know of her somewhat. Like, I knew she was married to Alec Baldwin, and that's all I knew. I really didn't know who she was. She lied. Let's just call it what it is. She lied. She lied about who she was. There are many going down the rabbit hole of this whole thing. There are many things that was said. She had a bio that said she was born in Mallorca, Spain, but raised in Boston. She, I believe it was April of 2020, where she did a podcast interview that said she was born in Mallorca and then she came to the United States at 19 to go to NYU. Now, to me, even if you're coming into the States at 19, you're pretty much, you're legally an adult. So you're telling me you were born and raised in Spain. That's what you're telling me when someone says, "Hey, I was born in Mallorca and I came to the United States to go to NYU when I was 19 years old." So that tells me, again, born and raised. But then then going back to that stuff where you're born in Mallorca, but you were raised in Boston, then it becomes a thing of, where did the accent come from? That is not a Boston accent at all. And I'll give it to her for all intents and purposes as someone who has grown up around Hispanics and Spanish people, Spaniards, Mexicans, Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, who has been brought up that. I can tell you very much that I know what a Spanish accent sounds like. I know if someone is Hispanic. I will know just based on their accent alone. And for all intents and purposes, she nailed down the Spanish accent pretty well. I would, if I had met her in person, I would think, wow, her English is, her English accent is very good for someone who was born and raised in Spain. It's great. I mean, you look at people like Antonio Banderas and you look at people like Penelope Cruz who are Spanish, and even my mom, for example, and I'll get to what I mean. That accent never loses. You know what I mean? That to me, if I hear her accent, it's a very light Spanish accent. She said she came to the United States at the age of 19 and she's in her late 30s. That's 20 some odd years. I would be keen to believe that just based on how heavy her accent is. I believe Antonio Banderas came to the United States. He was already like a full-fledged adult and doing Spanish films, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know, but I'm just assuming. I'm assuming, and I'm assuming the same with Penelope Cruz. Their accents are very thick, very thick. My mother, who was born in Puerto Rico and raised until the age of 7, came here to what I like to call the mainland. And she still has a Spanish accent, and she is 60 something years old. It's kind of it's been mixed with the Spanish New York accent. It's mixed, but I would think You know, you would think someone who came in from another country, really, let's call it feels like a world away, even though Puerto Rico is a territory of the United States. It really feels like its own country, to be honest, if I'm being perfectly honest. But if my mother, who has lived outside of Puerto Rico now most of her life, if she can still retain that Spanish accent, you know, it's not hard, and she still has her accent. I think her accent New York, it's like I said, it's mixed. It's hard to explain, but it's mixed. It's this Spanish East Coast thing going on, and it's never left her. That Spanish accent has never left her. Spanish is her first language. That's what she learned to speak first. And I believe she says she learned to speak English when she came to the United, or maybe she learned English first. I can't remember. I'm pretty sure she said like she taught herself Spanish, which was, I'm like, Mom, you're born in Puerto Rico. You're, you know, my abuela and, you know, abuelo, you know, they taught you Spanish, they spoke Spanish to you. I don't know what that means. I think she meant it backwards, honestly. I think, and that's what I'm going to go with. She taught herself English when she came to the mainland by watching TV. And like most people, like most kids, when they come from different countries and then English is not their first language, you learn by watching TV, you learn by reading books, you learn by interacting with your friends at school, that type of thing. So the accent. I want to get into what she said. Instagram, I think it was Instagram Live.
Hey guys, how are you? So I wanted to respond to some things that I've been seeing on Twitter, and I just want to be very clear, just because I
don't know if you can hear it, but notice how that accent, that Spanish accent, is now completely gone. She sounds like an American. She sounds like an American. I want to preface that. But she'll go into other videos, and I'll kind of bring an audio up, because I don't know if I can show it, and I don't want to get in trouble by YouTube. But she's pretending to be someone that she's not. And I'm going to keep saying that, because that's what it is. Here we go.
So there's some stuff that needs to be clarified. I've tried in the past to be clear, but sometimes people don't always.
No, you have not.
Report and write what you say, and I've kind of just put my hands up. But now we have this great community here, so I can just be straightforward with you. So there's been some questions about where I'm born. I'm born in Boston. And then
I want to preface that and keep that in mind. You can hear that. She was born in Boston. She said, I'm born in Boston. So you heard that, right? She was born in Boston.
Some of my childhood in Boston, some of my childhood in Spain.
Now, that's another thing that I want to, and I apologize that I keep pausing it, but that's another thing that I really want to go back into, and I kind of want to touch on that a little bit. She was born in Boston, like you said before. She spent some of her childhood in Boston, some of her childhood in Spain. Now, this is what I have learned. You can look it up. I'm sure it's going to be there somewhere. What I have learned was that Miss Hilliria was, I mean, she lived in a $4 million house. She went to a very, very nice school in Boston. Just because you spend your summers there, just because you spend your summers there does not mean that you spent some of your childhood there. It means that it's a place that you guys vacationed. You can say, oh, I vacationed there every summer since I was 19 years old. That doesn't mean that you were incorporated into that culture. And I think that her family calling her Hilliria, and her mom and her dad and her cousins, everybody calling her Hilliria, I think is just enabling this delusion that she's telling herself. Even there's videos of Alec Baldwin imitating his wife with a very thick Spanish accent. So I think two things. I think it's either he believed her and still believes her, and that's, you got your wife's back, and he thinks that everybody else is just being an asshole, but he thinks that everyone else is being jerks because they're like, her accent slips in and out. She's been in the United States since she was like 20 years old. Like, why does it matter? It matters because you're profiting. You're profiting off of a race that's not yours. It matters because you're profiting off of a culture that doesn't belong to you. That's why it matters. As a Latin woman, I cannot tell you how hurtful this is. How hurtful that somebody is impersonating a culture that doesn't belong to her, and then on top of all of that, profiting off of it. That's why it hurts, Hilliary, and that's why people are upset. Nobody cares that you spent your childhood in Mallorca. Nobody cares that you love the Spanish culture. Great, you can have an appreciation for Spanish culture. You can, and that's fine. That's totally fine. Do you. But to walk around for the better part of a decade, pretending to be a Hispanic woman, morphing yourself to look more Hispanic, because let me take that back. Let me retract that. I don't think that she's morphed herself into looking Hispanic. I think that that's what she looks like. And one of the greatest things about being Hispanic is that we come in all different shades, colors, and sizes. I have known Hispanics to be white as hell with blonde hair and blue eyes, to Hispanics that are purple dark, okay, with black eyes, and they're Spanish. There's such a wide range of a spectrum. You have people like Penelope Cruz. You have people like let's just do Spanish in general. You have people like Jennifer Lopez. You have people like Cameron Diaz. She's Cuban, by the way. Or she's part Cuban, by the way, but that still counts her as Hispanic. You have people like America Ferrera. You have people like Antonio Banderas, Benicio del Toro. Then you have people like Zoe Saldana. You have people like Cardi B, who are Afro-Latinas. We come in all shapes and sizes. And so I can see why it was easy for her to pass as a Spanish woman for so long. I can see the appeal, because if I'm being honest, I do think that, especially like European Spanish, there's something very exotic about them. And, I'm very much, I want to see how much. I did an ancestry DNA, and I'll maybe at some point I'll do a video in the future, but I'll pull it up. A lot of my Hispanic heritage or background comes from Spain. Comes from that mainland in Spain, because there's the Canary Islands, which is a Spanish territory, or it is part of Spain. No, not Canary. I always thought it was probably like the Canary Islands or something like that. No, I am like Maine, up part, Madrid, Barcelona, that up there. Where exactly, I would love to know. I would love to know how much Spanish roots that I have, but I can definitely understand and see why there's an appeal. I myself find, España, Spanish women to be exotic looking. There's an appeal there, and I can see that, and I can see wanting to be a part of a culture so badly that you're willing to just kind of reinvent yourself. And that's fine. what people are upset at is that you're lying. You lied about where you were born. You've lied about you've lied about who you are. And that is what people are upset with, Hillary. That's what people are upset with. Nobody cares that you spent vacations in Spain. Nobody cares that your family has now migrated to Spain. And definitely if you have cousins and things like that, if you have most of your family or a lot of your family has now moved to Spain, definitely at some point you're going to get some Spanish roped in into your lineage. But that's not you. I think I would have been a lot more accepting if you had said, I love Spanish culture. I love Spain. I've fallen in love with Spain. I think it's a beautiful culture. I think the people are beautiful, and that's amazing. That's amazing. You could have literally had just said that, you know what? I was born and raised in Massachusetts, but I spent a lot of my summers in Spain. I love the culture. I really identify with the Spanish culture. I grew up speaking both languages, English and Spanish, and I just love the culture so much. And that would be that. That would be that. Nobody would have said you wouldn't be in this situation if you had just led with that. All right, guys. Well, that's it for my rant. I hope that you guys enjoyed the conversation. I really want to open up, really have an open conversation about this. And do you agree with Hillary? Is this okay? Or do you think what she did was wrong and that's absolutely cultural appropriation? Let me know down below in the comments. Thank you. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again. And thank you again so very much. Please subscribe, tell your friends. I'm trying to grow my channel, and I want this to be somewhere where we can have fun and we can have some topics of conversation, or we can just come and you can hang out together and put on some makeup. If you guys like what I did to my face, let me know. It's a super simple look, and yeah, like I literally just like do that. But yeah, I just put on something very super neutral on my lips, and my lips, Kylie Jenner, as well as the blush on my cheeks. I tend to use a lot of lipsticks as like eyeshadow, blush, and lipstick. I do have some cream contour. I just wanted everything to just kind of look clean. But yeah, so if you want to know how I got this look, let me know and I'll recreate that for you. Super simple, super quick, super easy. And yeah, I've had some acne scars from the mask, and they've gotten better, but I just kind of felt like I wanted to cover them up today. So yeah, thank you guys so much for stopping by. I hope to see you again. Bye!